Welcome back for another deep dive. Theme is something that a lot of writers, they struggle with.
It really is.
And today we're going to be looking at chapter 14, Theme.
Okay.
From the book Story Ideas Unleashed by Peter von Stackelberg. And we're going to kind of unpack this idea of theme in storytelling and hopefully give you some things to think about in your own writing.
Yeah.
So if you're working on a story and you know you've hit that wall, or maybe you just want to get a better grasp on how theme really works in a story and elevates it, this is the deep dive for you.
Theme is often misunderstood, even by seasoned writers, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of people confuse it with the topic of the story.
Right. It's not just what the story's about.
Right.
It's that underlying message.
That's right.
About life or humanity, even the world.
Yeah.
It's really what you want the reader to be thinking about.
It is. It's, those universal kind of concepts that we all grapple with. Love, justice, freedom. So, a story could be set during a war, but its theme could be about the resilience of the human spirit.
Right.
Or the destructive nature of conflict. So it's not the topic itself.
It's how the topic plays out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you, as a writer, actually put theme into a story?
Right.
I mean, you don't usually see it, right there, blaring out.
No, and you shouldn't.
This is the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So how is it done?
I think it's woven through the narrative, through character actions, dialogue, plot points.
It's subtle.
It should be subtle.
Yeah.
It's almost, I think of it as a thread that kind of connects everything.
That's a good way to put it.
And as the story unfolds, this pattern emerges.
Yeah.
And it's more impactful, I think, when the reader discovers it for themselves.
Right. You're not hitting them over the head with it.
Yeah.
It's something that they discover.
Exactly.
And then it resonates more, I think.
I think so, too.
When they come to it on their own.
Yeah.
So I think a well-crafted theme, it really elevates a story from just being a sequence of events, to something that it makes you think. It makes you question your own beliefs.
Right.
And it really stays with you after you finish the book,
Exactly.
And those are the best kind of stories.
For sure.
The ones that you just keep thinking about.
Yeah.
Now, something that von Stackelberg talks about that I thought was really interesting, and this kind of goes with this whole idea of theme, is the interplay between theme and genre.
Okay.
So what do you think he means by that?
So think of genre as having a set of expectations when it comes to thematic exploration.
So the type of story that I'm writing impacts the themes that I might be exploring.
That's right.
Okay, can you give me a for instance?
Sure. So, each genre has a set of unspoken rules about what thematic territory it usually covers. So, science fiction often deals with the impact of technology on society.
Right.
Raising questions about humanity's relationship with machines, ethical dilemmas that come up.
Right.
Romance.
Uh-huh.
It usually centers on love, trust, personal growth, and exploring the complexities of human connection.
Sure.
Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently delves into, the classic battle between good and evil, themes of courage and sacrifice.
Right. The hero's journey.
Exactly.
So if I'm writing a sci-fi novel.
Yeah.
My readers are probably coming to the book expecting me to tackle those big questions about technology and humanity.
Right.
So it's not limiting. It's like
it's a framework.
It sets a stage.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And you can either play within those expectations or you can subvert them entirely.
Right. Even just thinking about genre and these conventions of genre.
Yeah.
It opens up all these creative possibilities.
Totally.
Because you can play within the rules.
Yeah.
Or you can bend them.
That's right.
And break them. And it's really cool to think about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Now, he also talks about how it's not just genre.
Right.
But archetypal stories.
Yeah.
Also have a strong connection to theme.
Right.
So what are some examples of, archetypal stories and their inherent themes?
Sure. So, adventure stories, those often revolve around themes of overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
Good triumphing over evil. Horror tends to delve into, our primal fears.
Okay.
Exploring the darkness within ourselves and the world around us.
Oh, yeah.
Then mysteries are all about uncovering the truth.
Right.
Themes of justice and the complexities of human motivation.
So even when I'm choosing my archetype for my story, I'm also, in a way, making a thematic choice.
Yes. It provides a foundation.
It's all starting to click now.
Good.
Okay, so we've talked about genre, we've talked about archetype, how they influence theme.
Yeah.
But how does a writer, how do you actually go about crafting a theme in your story?
Yeah.
Is it something that you just kind of,
You stumble on.
Yeah. Or is it something that you really plan out ahead of time?
Well, Peter von Stackelberg describes 3 main approaches to crafting theme.
Okay.
And each with its own advantages and challenges. So the first is what he calls emergent, where you let the theme kind of develop organically as you write.
So you're kind of discovering it?
You are discovering it.
As you go along.
As you go.
Okay.
The second approach is what he calls predetermined, where you have a clear idea of your theme from the outset.
Okay.
And you structure your story to serve that theme.
So that's a lot more, planned out, I guess.
It is. And this is common when writers want to explore, specific social issues or philosophical ideas. So it can be very impactful.
Right.
But it does require careful planning to make sure that everything aligns with the message that you want to get across. And then lastly, he talks about what he calls a balanced approach, which, as the name implies, blends elements of both emergent and predetermined approaches.
So you have kind of an idea where you want to go.
You do.
But you're allowing it to grow organically as well.
You got it.
Like you're setting sail.
Yeah.
But you're open to,
You're open to changing course.
Right. If you see an island you want to explore.
You got it. Exactly.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So you have a roadmap, but you're open to those unexpected discoveries.
Right.
That might enrich your thematic exploration.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of writers actually find themselves doing.
I think so too.
They have a general idea.
Yeah.
But then the characters take over.
That's right.
Or the story takes over.
Yeah.
And you discover things that you didn't even know were there.
Exactly.
Now, we've been talking about, themes, kind of like there's one theme.
Right.
But what about stories that have multiple themes that they're exploring? Is that even possible?
It's not only possible, but it can also bring more depth and nuance to your work.
Okay.
Life is rarely about just one big idea.
Right.
And I think neither are great stories.
Right.
So I think multiple themes can create a richer, more complex tapestry.
So it's adding layers.
It's adding layers.
But there are certain pitfalls.
There are.
To avoid.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you keep a story that has multiple themes from being too confusing to the reader?
Right. I think the key is cohesion.
Okay.
So all the themes that you explore should be connected to your central narrative.
Okay.
And often there's a dominant theme.
Kind of the main theme?
The main theme with these supporting sub-themes.
Okay.
Think of it as a symphony.
Okay.
With a main melody.
Right.
And then you have all these other instruments.
Weaving in and out.
Exactly.
So too many, separate themes would be like an orchestra where everybody's playing a different song.
Exactly. You'd have quite a cacophony.
It would be a mess.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
But you can add that richness and complexity.
You can.
With multiple themes.
Definitely.
If it's done well.
If it's done well. When it's done well, it adds so much.
It does. It does. Okay. So we've defined theme.
Yeah.
We've talked about its relationship with genre and archetype and the different approaches to crafting theme.
Right.
But now I'm curious, what makes a theme really compelling?
Okay.
What are the qualities that we should be striving for?
Right.
When we're developing themes in our stories?
So von Stackelberg highlights 3 key characteristics that he thinks contribute to a strong and engaging theme.
Okay.
And those are values, tension, and central conflict.
Now, we've kind of touched on tension.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested in these values. What does he mean by values?
So think of them as the moral compass of your story.
Okay.
The core principles or beliefs that are at the heart of your thematic exploration. So redemption, honor, sacrifice, justice, freedom.
Okay.
These are just a few examples.
So these values influence the character's choices.
They do.
Their actions.
Yes.
And they shape how the reader is interpreting the message of the story.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah, they add a layer of meaning
Yeah.
to the events of the story. And they allow the reader, I think, to connect with the characters on a much deeper level.
Right. Because we all have our own values.
We do.
And so we could see how those are being played out
Exactly.
in the story.
Yeah.
And this ties back to thematic tension, right?
It does.
Because those values, those are the things that are going to be tested.
Right.
Or they're going to come into conflict
Exactly.
with each other.
Yeah.
And so von Stackelberg gives the example of ambition
Yeah.
as a theme.
As a theme. Yeah.
So the values that might be at play there are personal fulfillment.
Right.
Maybe even social justice, depending on the story.
Right.
But the tension arises when that character has to make a choice
Yes.
between their ambition
Yes.
and their values.
Right.
Do they compromise their morals
Right.
to achieve success?
Yeah.
Do they sacrifice relationships,
Uh-huh.
for professional gain? And those are the things I think that really make a reader kind of, be invested in what's happening in the story.
For sure. And that's when it gets good.
Yeah.
When you're really you're invested in what's going to happen to these characters because you relate to them.
Absolutely.
We all have those struggles.
Now, the other thing von Stackelberg talks about is how the central conflict in your story needs to be a direct reflection of that chosen theme.
Right.
So it's not just having conflict.
It's not arbitrary.
For the sake of having conflict.
Yeah.
It has to be tied into what you're exploring.
That's right.
Thematically.
It has to be meaningful.
Right.
Yeah.
So if my theme is, let's say, self-sacrifice, right? Then the main conflict in my story should be forcing my characters.
Yes.
To make those choices.
Right.
That challenge that value.
To wrestle with those ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you give an example of how this works in like a well-known story?
Sure. So The Lord of the Rings, the theme of good versus evil is central to the entire narrative.
Yes.
And every conflict, I think, from the smallest skirmish to, the epic battle for Middle-earth reinforces that theme.
So it's all working together.
It's all got to work together
to
create that cohesive whole.
That's the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
And so to kind of illustrate all these points, von Stackelberg, he dissects 3 classic novels.
Okay.
To Kill a Mockingbird, 1984, and The Great Gatsby.
You picked some good ones.
Yeah. And shows how these concepts are playing out in these, masterfully written stories.
Sure.
So let's start with To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. What can we learn about theme from Harper Lee's masterpiece?
So, To Kill a Mockingbird is set in the American South during the Jim Crow era. And we see the world through the eyes of Scout Finch.
Right.
This young girl whose father, Atticus, is a lawyer defending a black man wrongfully accused of assaulting a white woman.
And it's a story that I think still resonates today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's exploring those issues of racial injustice.
Yes.
And prejudice that, unfortunately, we're still dealing with.
We are.
So what are some of the, those values that are at play here? The thematic values.
So justice, empathy, and moral courage, I think, are evident from the start.
And those are all kind of embodied in Atticus Finch.
Right.
The father.
Exactly.
He's a good man.
Yeah.
He's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. And he doesn't just talk about it.
No.
He lives it.
He does.
And so that's where the tension comes in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because his belief in justice clashes with the prejudice.
Yes.
That's all around him.
Right.
And it comes to a head, of course, during the trial.
During the trial, right.
And so it's really a reminder to us all.
Yeah.
To stand up for what we believe in.
Absolutely.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit and look at 1984.
Okay.
Which is, kind of a very different set of themes.
Yes.
But just as impactful, I think.
Very impactful.
It takes us into this world of totalitarianism.
Right.
Where truth is manipulated.
Right.
And individuality is crushed.
Yes.
So what are the core values that we see at work here?
So Winston Smith, the protagonist, embodies the values of truth.
Okay.
Freedom and individual expression.
Right.
All of which, of course, are under attack.
Right.
In Oceania.
Right.
So he represents, I think, the human spirit's inherent desire for autonomy and authenticity.
Right. He wants to be free.
He wants to be free.
To be himself.
To be an individual.
And so that tension comes from, his rebellion.
His rebellion.
Against the state.
Right.
Right. That push and pull between what he wants.
Yeah.
And what the state is forcing on him.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see it play out both internally as he battles with his own thoughts and doubts.
Right.
And then externally, of course, through his acts of defiance.
Now, how does the resolution of this conflict?
Yeah.
How does that speak to the overall theme of the book?
I think the tragic ending of 1984 is really a cautionary tale,
Okay.
a stark reminder of the fragility of freedom
Yeah.
and the devastating consequences of, surrendering our individual rights to a totalitarian regime.
Right.
So it's a story that really compels us, I think, to be
aware of what's going on.
to think critically
Yeah.
about the world around us.
Yeah. And to be engaged.
Be engaged.
Because it can happen.
It can happen.
I mean, even though it's fiction,
Right.
it's a warning.
It is.
Okay. So for our final example, let's step into the world of The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
Now, this is a story
Yeah.
that has captivated readers
For sure.
for generations.
It has.
So what makes its thematic exploration so compelling, do you think?
Well, on the surface, it's a tale of love,
Okay.
ambition, the allure of the American dream.
Right.
But I think upon closer examination, it reveals a much darker side
Okay.
to these pursuits.
So it's not just all,
Glamour and glitz.
yeah, champagne and parties.
No,
Right.
there's more to it than that.
Right.
There's themes of illusion and disillusionment
Okay.
and the corrosive nature of wealth and social status.
And so we see Gatsby, he's obsessed with recreating the past.
He is.
He's trying to win back Daisy.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to his downfall.
It does.
So how do those events really kind of tie back to the theme?
I think Gatsby's tragic end really serves as a critique of the American dream itself.
Oh, wow.
Exposing the emptiness that can often lie at its core.
So it's like a cautionary tale.
It is a cautionary tale.
God.
Yeah. His grand parties, his opulent mansion, this meticulously crafted persona.
Yeah.
It's all a facade.
A show.
It's a show,
Yeah. And it's all to try to win back this love that's rooted in the past.
Right. That's gone.
That can't be
That
recreated.
could be recreated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very sad story.
It is a sad story.
But beautifully written.
Beautifully written. And it really leaves us contemplating, the price of our dreams and the illusions that we create in pursuit of them. At the end of this chapter, von Stackelberg has some questions for you, the writer, to think about as you're considering, how to weave theme effectively into your narratives.
Well, that's great. Can you share a couple that you found particularly helpful?
Yeah, one that I really liked was, how does your protagonist embody or challenge the theme's values? So I thought that was really interesting.
It's really looking at, okay, so you have your theme in mind.
Right.
But how is that character actually interacting with those values?
Right, exactly. So if your theme is forgiveness, how does your main character grapple with that?
Right.
Do they struggle to forgive themselves
Right.
or others?
Right.
Do they ultimately embrace forgiveness or reject it?
Right.
And it's through those struggles, I think, that we see the theme come to life.
It's not just an idea.
It's not just an idea. It's really how
Right.
it plays out.
Yeah. It's how that character embodies it.
Exactly.
Struggles with it.
Yeah.
What was another one that you found helpful?
He also asks, what elements of your setting reinforce or contrast with the theme? So he's encouraging us to think about setting.
So the setting can play a role
Oh, absolutely.
in really bringing out those themes or even challenging them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so imagine a story about isolation.
Okay.
Setting it in a desolate, abandoned landscape would certainly reinforce that feeling.
Right. Right.
But setting it in a bustling city where everyone is surrounded yet disconnected could add a layer of irony.
Yeah. Like they're surrounded by people, but they're still alone.
Exactly.
It's really, really interesting to think about setting in those terms.
It is. Yeah. He also encourages writers to analyze how dialogue reveals or develops the theme.
So what are the characters actually saying?
Right. But it's not always about what's stated.
Right.
It's about what's underneath.
Right. Like the subtext.
The subtext, exactly.
Yeah.
So how do those words reflect their internal struggles?
Right.
Do their conversations hint at those big questions that the story is grappling with?
Right. It's like in a film where the characters are saying one thing, but their tone of voice is saying something completely different.
Right.
And the audience picks up on that.
That's right. Right.
Yeah. And then finally, he reminds us to think about sub-themes.
Okay.
So those are the secondary themes.
Right.
That can add layers and richness
Okay.
to that primary theme.
So they're supporting the main theme.
They are supporting that main theme, but he stresses, making sure that they complement and enrich the main theme without overshadowing it.
So it's like adding different spices to a recipe.
Exactly.
You want to enhance the flavor. You don't want to overwhelm it.
You got it. And he also, he underscores the significance of the climax and the resolution
Okay.
in reflecting the theme. So, the way the conflict is resolved, it should provide a sense of closure.
Right. It should all come together.
It should all come together, while also offering insights into the thematic questions the story has explored.
It has to make sense.
It's got to make sense.
Wow. I feel like this conversation has given me a whole new appreciation for theme and how crucial it is to a good story.
Me too.
I feel like I want to go back and look at my own work now.
And really think about these things.
Yeah, I think von Stackelberg has given us some really valuable tools and insights.
He has.
And I think, by paying close attention to how we develop and integrate theme,
Right.
we can really elevate our writing and create those stories that resonate.
The ones that stick with people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, we encourage you to do the same.
Yes.
Think about the themes that you're exploring in your own stories.
What values are at stake?
Yeah, what are the tensions? How are you as a character?
Setting.
Dialogue to bring those themes to life.
What techniques are you using?
And here's a final thought to ponder. What's a story that you love that has a theme that really resonated with you? How did the author do that?
Yes.
How did they make you feel that?
Yeah.
And until next time, happy writing.
Happy writing.